Hello, we're live, and welcome to TF2 Esports podcast, weekly podcast, episode 2. And I'm sorry we missed you guys last week. I was out of town. I was visiting my mom. She just turned 60. So I'm sorry we didn't have an episode last week, but we're here this week. So we have our 4 co-hosts here, myself, Mr. Slyn. We have Curtis, Truck Truck Russ, That Guy Tag, Austin Wade, and Grant Vincent Banny. So welcome, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. Happy Friday. And the show is dedicated to you guys. Our goal is to talk about the issues pertaining to competitive TF2, how do we grow TF2, and like what is the next step for us. So the first thing that I want to talk about before we get talk about any of that really is what's our responsibility in that whole thing. Like, for the last 8 years, competitive TF2 has been grown by the community. The community's role in all of this is to try and drive the scene forward. But now the developers are stepping in, putting matchmaking into the game client. They're obviously trying to grow the game themselves now. So how much of it is our responsibility and how much of it is theirs? And I want to turn it over to you guys first, to see what you think about that. So I'll start with Austin because he looks particularly suspicious over there.
I'm thinking like it's probably just to make sure that people support the developers and actually give feedback and constructive feedback, that is, and make sure that they play the updates that developers are putting out and make sure that the support is there.
Yeah. I guess I should open this up more and talk to you guys about like what other games are doing. So I'm playing a little bit of Overwatch this week, and I'll show you guys this thing. This is the E-League and Faceit partner to present Overwatch Open. It's a $300,000 open tournament. It's the largest Overwatch competition to date, and the winners will be playing it over at the TBS, like live on TBS, which is huge. It's on cable. It's at the E-League Arena in Atlanta. Big deal over there. You also have like this Overwatch World Cup. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but basically every country nominates their own team that will go to represent their country at the World Cup, and then they're going to compete to see who's the best country. And also, of course, other games are doing this as well. I have bookmarked here the International, which is going to be going on next week, has just about reached their $20 million prize pool, which is absolutely insane. But you have crazy. Other games too, like Smite, right, where they raise their own money for their games. They had over $1 million for their prize pools, and Riot Games have been doing League of Legends for a long time. So like, should TF2 be doing that kind of thing? Like, maybe not on the scale of like $20 million tournaments, but I don't think TF2 has ever had a tournament reach $1 million, like let alone $100,000 for a prize pool, right? Like I can't tell you what the largest prize pool has ever been for TF2, but it's definitely nowhere near that.
I think the largest prize pool we ever had is around probably 15K for ESEA invite, and it's never been any higher than that as far as I know. Actually, maybe ancient tournaments like in like 2008 might have had something bigger, but those are not really relevant anymore. But I think any of that stuff would work in TF2 for sure. But yeah, is that the end of the discussion? Like, if they did that, it would work, and competitive
like,
TF2 would be popular.
All you need to do is have a $20 million tournament, and TF2 is safe. But good job, guys. We're done. We're done here.
I don't think it would work right now because everybody agrees that the matchmaking system sucks right now, and I think that's the beginning. Fix matchmaking. Take the feedback and work it out, because the matchmaking system's not on a bell curve like we discussed 2 weeks ago. It's just like a messed up system that doesn't make anybody happy. So make people happy. It seems like people enjoy competitive, but they just don't like the current state of matchmaking. So when people like competitive and they like matchmaking and they're playing it a lot, then the next step for Valve is to balance the game around the current meta or whatever, and then potentially support competitive teams with big tournaments.
Yeah, like I was saying before, we need to make sure that we as players now support the developers. Like, we aren't going to get the $20 million prize pool like next week, unfortunately. It's going to take time, and like Kurt said, it's going to take a few updates. They're going to have to iron out and make sure that they make matchmaking perfect and fun, and they fix the ranking system, and then priority on tournaments and everything will come after that once they figure out how they want the game to be played competitively and viewed competitively. And for us as players, we need to make sure that we don't stop playing the game during this time, because if we do, then they're just going to say, well, we wasted our time, and they're not going to get to that stage. So we need to make sure as players to make sure don't stop playing this game. Like
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
happening.
I think it's obviously important to continue playing the game. Like when you play the game, you're giving feedback and you're testing out the system, and that's how they use that information to like make the game better. But I'm talking about like the stuff outside of the game. I mean, the stuff outside of the game is just as important as the game itself. Like for example, the place where everyone comes together and talks about this stuff is Team Fortress TV, right? And that was driven by the community. Like a community member actually made that website and put together for everyone else to use. And there's other systems out there as well. I mean, you got PugChamp, Faceit was just springing up, and ESEA, and all these stuff are outside of the actual game, right? So like, how important is that to TF2, or is it like not that important? And maybe we should just be focused on everyone playing matchmaking and everyone trying to drive matchmaking forward instead of pushing forward all these other systems like there's tons of other things like newbie mixes. There's a bunch of other systems outside of that, right?
They are important. Like you say, I mean, with CSGO, we have, the in-game matchmaking for CSGO, and then ESEA matchmaking is a huge thing with that. So we have that same like kind of community alternative with PugChamps and MixChamp, and now we have the Faceit as well, which is really cool. So like we do need these offspring of alternatives as well, but we also need to make sure, because like we are at the very, very, very like early point of developer support for the game, and it's important to remember that and make sure that we don't like ignore it or forget about it while all these other things, like we don't want to move too fast away from this initial support that we have.
So what do you think we should do, like as a community? Do you think we should all like create some like vision or some plan of action or something where we all agree we're going to play matchmaking like this many hours a week, or we all come together and create a list of things and we all like send it to Valve together, or like because it sounds like a lot of the issues right now we agree are kind of with matchmaking, and once matchmaking is working then we can move forward. But like what can we really do about that part? That's the question.
Well, I guess one question we could start with is like, raise your hand if you've played matchmaking in the last week.
I have a couple
Okay, so
times.
maybe I'm the only person who hasn't played it in the last week, because I feel like it wasn't that much fun for me. Like I already got some, maybe because I already got to rank 18, so like I'm done with it. But like there was nothing left to do for me at that point. After you've reached the highest rank, like there's no incentive to continue playing. Whereas in other games, there might be that incentive to continue working past that. Like if I play, I actually have a chance to lose my rank, so I don't want to play it anymore, right?
Well,
Yeah.
that's where the problem lies, Lynn. Like the point of matchmaking is to be playing good games of TF2 with people at your skill level, not play just random opponents and have random teammates of different skill. It's about having a good game, and that's not what it brings currently. And if that changes, the next step is what's wrong with the current matchmaking system. I think after Valve fixes the ranking system, the biggest problem that's going to come up after that is item balance and class balance, because you're going to see teams do whatever it takes to win. In beta, we saw people use double Natasha, Vaccinator, Quick Fix combo, and it was just so unbelievably crappy. But it's a winning strategy, and people are going to find out those weird strategies that aren't very hard to pull off, but are very, very hard to counter. And Valve's going to have to do something about changing that so the game doesn't turn stale that way. Because right now it's stale because it's just not fair matches.
Yeah. Have you seen the graphic out there of like the rank distribution comparing CS:GO
I actually
ranks to
No,
the
I haven't seen that.
TF2 one?
You want to link that
Yeah.
in our chat?
I can look for it. You might know where
That'd be
to find it,
interesting.
Kurt.
Yeah. Well, I would expect it to be pretty like heavily
I know what
weighted
he's
towards the
talking
front end,
about.
right? Because everyone starts at level 1, so wouldn't the bulk of players be at those lower levels? Or did you see people actually pushing their way up to the higher ranks?
Well,
Okay.
generally what it is that it compares CSGO's matchmaking system, which is a bell curve. Like the average player is like in the middle rank, like most of the players in the middle ranks, not many people at the high ranks, not people at the many people at the low ranks. Then it shows TF2 where like the vast majority of people are at rank 1 and 2, and there's single digit numbers past that point for
Yeah.
ranks 3 and up, which is absurd.
I just sent it. I don't know the source of this, so I don't know if it's true or whatever, like 100% accurate, but definitely feels accurate, and I think it probably is.
I think the source is from the TF2 matchmaking poll. Some person posted this on Reddit and TF2v. I think he posted on a couple other forums. He got a couple
Oh, okay.
thousand responses, and I think that's what it's from.
Okay, so it's a poll.
It's in
I
the
put it in
Discord.
the topics.
So yeah, I think right now we're going through growing pains. I mean, obviously Valve knows by this time that there are issues with the ranking system. They even said it in a blog post, but they don't know how to address it yet because, I mean, like there's individual like skill play in Team Fortress 2, and I'm thinking that they're probably trying to figure out how do we, you know, do we give like people awards or more rank or less rank depending on how many points they get or how much healing they get, and trying to take all these factors in. But I mean, it just boils down to like this. Once again, this is the first initial like response from Valve, and this is the first initial like rollout of the matchmaking system. We're going through growing pains. We need to make sure that we just don't abandon it as a community just because it's not perfect right off the box, and we need to make sure that we keep a positive outlook on things, that they will be better in the future, and not just dwell on, oh man, this is butt right now and this is going to be terrible forever, because that's not not reasonable.
But can you really fault players for not getting into matchmaking if they if it's not fun for them? Like they're gonna gravitate towards whatever's fun. So if it's not fun, they're not gonna play it. So
and that's
not
why I say
under our control.
And that's why I say we need to like be careful with what we say and say that yes, we understand that there are issues right now and it is frustrating, but we need to be positive for the future updates and not just, you know, completely just shut everything down just because the initial rollout is a little bit rough.
Sure. This chart is actually really interesting to me because, yeah, it says 50% of players are level 1, and I can assume that I guess a lot of players are just, you know, still playing the casual games, or there's plenty of other things to do in TF2. There's like a whole variety of game modes that you can play, but it is kind of surprising to see like some people just haven't really progressed very far. Is it? I mean, a lot of people have acknowledged that the system feels kind of like a grind. Do you guys feel that way too?
Well, it's systematic. It's fundamentally flawed. If you have a 50% win rate, you are going to be rank 1 unless you have a ridiculous winning streak. That is messed up. That should not be a thing. If you have a 50% win rate, in my eyes, you should be around the middle ranks. You shouldn't be at the bottom. You shouldn't be at the top. And it's just fundamentally flawed. It will never change from this unless they change how the ranks are distributed.
That's unfortunate. That's really unfortunate. So I guess in a related topic, Faceit has been this new system that's popping up. There's a lot of other systems that have popped up recently that are similar, but you can see that people are trying to coming to these other systems to try and have fun in TF2 because the matchmaking system isn't that great. So I think one of the most popular ones right now is PugChamp because that's where all the high level players tend to go. I see you playing it virtually every night, Vanny. And it seems like a pretty good system, right? It's free. Like, is there any reason to use anything else, or is that just the go-to system because it works?
Yeah, right now that's probably the best place for me to find games. I haven't tried Faceit yet, but I'm optimistic, and I feel like Faceit would eventually be the ideal place for me to play. Just because, I don't know, I feel like it has a lot more just like relevance to progressing TF2 esports than PugChamp does. As nice of a system as like PugChamp happens to be, like, I don't know, sometimes we might have to like take a step back in terms of functionality, in order to get big gains in like, I don't know, rewards or something, who knows. Because I think it's such a recognizable brand that might be worth it. And from what I've heard, the games go pretty smoothly. So
does anyone know just like a general like info list of Faceit for people that don't know in the chat?
I actually haven't even played it yet. I think the only person here who's played it is Kurt, right? And Kurt, you said you've played a couple of games of it, or
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
you played a tournament, or what was
as
your?
Faceit in general?
Well, Faceit is a system that pretty much supports competitive gaming. They have pickup game systems, they have leagues, they have tournaments, and they have like a point system for participating in all three of those things. And those points can earn you like real life stuff, like a gaming chair, like Tag's gaming chair. You can get that. Like it's cool, like really cool incentives for everybody to play. And all you do to get them is just play the system. And for me personally, I think the Pug system is a little bit better than TF2 Center as far as quality of games go. But as far as supporting a massive amount of people, I think it's fantastic. And they have some sort of ranking system, and I think it will support higher level games as the ranks get distributed properly. So I'm very optimistic about Faceit, but the problem is that you have to pay to use it. I think all the people that are participating in beta right now have premium for free for 1 month, but after that you have to pay to use it. So that's the only big issue with Faceit I see.
Wow.
Everything else is very nice.
So in that case, it's directly competing with ESEA then, right? Where these are both pay-to-play Pug systems.
Yeah, but ESEA sucks and Faceit's pretty good. Like,
Yeah.
I think actually
ESEA
nobody
Pug
plays on
system-
for
ESEA,
Pugs.
right?
ESEA is not used for Pugs whatsoever. It's been
No.
attempted in the past, but it's just so difficult to change that system and to like, I don't know, to work within it that it's kind of been abandoned. And it seems like, I mean, the Faceit people are actually posting on the TFTV forums, so it seems like there's a little bit more of a connection between our community and what they're building, so I think that's important. And it's going to set it apart from what ESEA Pugs are. But I don't know. I didn't know it was going to be a paid service, so hopefully the tournaments and the Pug prizes or whatever are going to be substantial. But you compared it to TF2 Center, Kurt. Is that only because of like the skill level of players, or what was it that reminded you of TF2 Center when you
Yeah,
played it?
just skill level. Some people didn't really know what they were doing. It was posted on Reddit, but that's fine. Like, I think it's the beginning of a new system, and ranks are being distributed. I don't know if ranks come into play as far as the queue goes just yet, but I know for a fact they do in CS:GO, like the more established systems they have. So I imagine it's coming in the future if the player base can support some sort of ranking system. I think it's like gold, silver, and bronze, and maybe like an invite division type deal. So I do think PugChamp is best for like probably high open players and above, but I don't think it can support that many people, whereas Faceit can. And in the future, I think it can deliver the quality of Pugs that PugChamp does deliver currently.
Well, it sounds like
Yeah.
this is just the beginning too, because Faceit also does leagues. So if they grow their Pug system enough and people are using their system and paying for premium, then that could be a way to get people to loop into a league and start playing on a seasonal basis. So that sounds like
Yeah.
a plan for them.
But the thing is, everything is just the beginning, but could also be just the end unless people
Too real.
use it.
Yeah.
They have to use it.
Yeah,
That's
I
the
think.
thing.
Well, to relate Razer with this, I think that would probably come up next. But the problem with Razer is that it wasn't like a developed system. The reason I'm so excited about Faceit right now is that it's a developed system. It has Counter-Strike. It has a few other games that hundreds of users use it every day. I think thousands concurrently.
Well, Razer
use
still
it
has a
every day.
system. Wait, are you talking about the one for
Razer's
Pugs? Or are you talking about
current-
the one for tournaments? Because they had like the system
So-
where you could start your own tournament.
I think Pugs is bigger because I don't know. Also, the incentives that Faceit gives you are very addicting. I thought it was a little gimmicky at first. You get these little Faceit points, but every time they like pop up on your little menu, it's like, oh man, I'm closer to getting a new gaming mouse. It's really cool. Like it makes me
cool.
want to play more.
So Faceit pickup games are free. If you want to get in any leagues, then you have to do a. So
But you still need to
Oh.
pay premium to get
yeah,
play
yeah.
them. So it's free, but you have to pay premium. Is that what it is, or
no,
just straight
no,
up
no,
free?
no. Pickup games are free. If you want to play in a tournament, or if you want to play in a league and league ladders with special prizes, then you need to pay, and it's £3 a month. So do the conversions. But if you just want to play Pugs pickup games, it is free. It is a free subscription. If you want to win something, from a tournament, then you have to put money into that prize pool, which is the monthly subscription.
Interesting.
I did not know that. That's inspiring. People should play Faceit.
I'm looking at the website right now.
It is, but it's also confusing. Like, I feel one of the issues in TF2 is that there's so many different pug systems that people just don't know where to go. And I'm not that familiar with the pug systems that happen in Europe or wherever else, but in North America, we already have a ton of systems. You have like Center, you have Stadium, you have PugChamp, and then MixChamp is obviously part of that. Faceit, and then ESEA, which nobody uses. And ESEA also, if you remember, also tried to do the giveaway prizes for playing in the pugs. I know Vanny collected many a prize for winning, like, you know, if you get like most points in a month, you got like a video card or something.
Yeah, I got a couple of video cards and mouse pads from
And
ESEA.
yeah, so I just feel like that's too much fragmentation. You know what I'm saying? Where
Yeah.
people are just going to too many different places. So it creates an issue that a lot of other games have, where because so many people are playing in different places, you don't actually know who the best players are, because like you could be the best Faceit player, but you know that guy will never compete against the best TF2 center player or whatever.
It reminds me of what happened when we had CEVO and ESEA. Like, we couldn't sustain 2 leagues, so maybe the same problem is going to happen, or is happening right now. Like, and we just don't even realize how important it is that our pugs are so scattered that like there's no place that's really healthy for anyone. And like, I don't know how to solve that. Like, does someone need to just like, do they need to shut down all the competitors, or is the competition good? Like, I don't know.
I think it's like it's important as like big community figures to make sure that that people know that if we want this game to like survive and get more leagues, then we should probably go where the money is, like realistically, and that is Faceit right now.
Well,
And
it's
if
definitely
Faceit-
not in matchmaking. You're not gonna get any money playing matchmaking, so it's kind of hard to tell people like, hey, you should play matchmaking when there's no real incentive there. When it's like, oh, well, if you play these other systems, you might actually earn something, right?
Yeah, I'll always view matchmaking as an introduction, so to speak, and like third-party matchmaking systems as more serious, in-depth games, sort of like how CS:GO does it.
Yeah. So do you think we have a responsibility, like as streamers, perhaps, to just show off these systems and
Yeah,
promote
definitely.
them? Because I
Absolutely.
actually I did that for a little bit with MixChamp,
Mhm.
and I just played it a few times, and then apparently people started playing it more and more, and
Well, I mean,
mixes were going all day. So I think it can be effective.
Think about it in CS:GO. Like, there are websites that pay CS:GO players to use their services on stream, like CS:GO gambling sites, because it works. People see their favorite player seeing it, and they see the. I mean,
Well, it's
they see-
publicity.
yeah, it's publicity.
Yeah,
exactly.
it's like there's a couple thousand people that didn't know about this thing before. Now they know that this thing exists, and they're watching you try it out. So now they kind of know how it works. I mean, my personal opinion on it is that the in-game client matchmaking system should be better, should be the best system possible, because it's integrated in there. You got the biggest like player pool playing that. There's no external like publicity needed to get people to play it. They already know that it exists. It's not like you have to tell people about Faceit and get them involved. It's like they already know it's there. And the reason why the people don't do it in Counter-Strike is because of the servers, the tick rate or whatever, and that
You're
the
right.
matchmaking servers are just not as good as the ESEA servers. But in TF2, the tick rate's still exactly the same. The quality of the server is the same. So unless like the rule set is vastly different, or they're like paying you tons of money. I mean, yeah, a $300 gaming chair is nice, but how many people are actually going to be able to get enough points to earn that chair? I don't really know. I think it's more important to be like playing the main system that everyone else is playing. When I watch League of Legends, for example, like it actually means something to be a challenger in League of Legends, because all the pros are playing it supposedly.
You're right. Mhm.
So in that
I don't
sense,
think we should play. I feel like we should just support whatever system we feel like is best. And if matchmaking is a flop, which it is currently, but Tag said, and I agree, that it is in its early stages. All of us have played it enough to have a developed opinion on why we don't like it, and I'm pretty sure all of us have vocalized our opinions on why it's bad, as well as every other person that has played it extensively. It's up to Valve to fix it and change it for the better, so we are encouraged to play it. Like, I don't want to sacrifice having fun playing my favorite game just to support a system that I don't like. I've already played it enough to come to the conclusion that there are better options.
And we do have the situation where you brought up like different rule sets. For matchmaking, we have the no rules pretty much. It's just no item bans. You can play however many. There's no class limits and everything like that. I do think that I honestly have no clue what Valve will do about that, but for right now, Faceit does have what they're using the European rule set, I think, right?
Yeah, they're using European rule set. I'm not sure what whitelists they're using, but there's a lot of weapons that I've seen that are unbanned that I've seen haven't seen in other systems, like the Iron Bomber. So I think it's a little bit more lenient of a whitelist, which is good. I think that's what we need to lean towards, but obviously not so much so that it ruins the game's integrity. But I do like it.
The interesting thing about all the systems is that they all use different rules, like you mentioned, and they all have different. It's very clear that, like you said, the game is really early on and hasn't quite figured out the rule set. I mean, maybe we feel like we figured out the rule set because we've been playing it for so long, but these other systems haven't quite agreed. I mean, even within competitive, like not everyone agrees on the same rules. So, do you feel like we should be like making the rules then on our own? I mean, we can host our own tournaments. We can make our own rules. If you made a tournament that said, look, and I'm just going to throw a random number out there, $2,000, and here are the rules to win this tournament, and you had enough of these tournaments, the people would just start playing. They'd be forced to practice that rule set because that's the next event that they're going to be competing for, right?
Yeah, that's where the money is.
Right. So if Faceit decided to say, look, we're going to just keep doing this European rule set and here are these prizes and stuff, then people would just keep practicing the European rule set, and that would be common for everyone. Is that the best way to go? Or is it like the Valve approach, which is like, we're slowly going to iterate on this game design and, we're going to just guess if people are liking it or not, or use stats in the background or whatever it is.
I do think it's easier for third-party companies to just make up wacky rules. Whereas, I mean, for Valve, if they make some rules, it's for every single person that plays the game, rather than just like a specific player base that's using this third-party system. So, I don't know. I do think that that's not on Valve to try out just crazy rule sets and everything like that. I do think it's best for Valve to take it slowly, and that if we do want to try like different stuff, that's on other tournament creators.
Do you think testing those things in ESEA would be too big of a risk?
Yeah, I do think ESEA is our only like solid ground right now. If we mess up ESEA, like what other leagues do we have for competitive?
Yeah,
I mean, it could be a thing for PugChamp or MixChamp or TF2 Center to just do like a an experimental like rule list thing that you can sign up for and try out games for once in a while or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe
I think that would be a good place to test and experiment, because PugChamp has like Reckoner on it. In I-58 there's going to be Reckoner, but like different maps and potentially different rules could be tested. One thing that I'd like to see tested actually is allowing dropped weapons to be picked up, including mediguns. I think that could actually be a pretty interesting aspect to the game that's been completely ignored, is the fact that now mediguns like drain Uber. Yeah. So it could actually be fun and exciting to see people fighting over dropped mediguns. And then things like class limits and whitelists, all that stuff too.
Personally, I want to see or test out a class limit change to 6v6 and see how it'll go out.
Yeah, what would you want to try?
I've been thinking about it for a while, even before Overwatch did it, of like 1 class limits, and seeing how teams adapt to like having support roles and having more defense and like swapping those out, because like
you just want to snipe.
No, but no, because we played against European teams that snipe all the time. We know how terrible it is to play against snipers. Snipers pretty much one of the best classes in the game, but you have pretty much 2 designated slots now to swap out classes, and so that means you'll see more variety. In theory, I don't know if this will work. That's why you need to test it. But people could go spy, people could go engineer. I'm looking at the
But, like,
classes because I don't even know these.
If that was a
And
fun
it's
game
stellar,
mode,
then- Go
I
ahead.
disagree with you because I feel like if that was a fun game mode, people would have been playing that a long time ago. You know?
You're right. Yeah.
Like at the early parts of the game, everyone tried different things. It was like 8-on-8 and like 5-on-5, and they even tried 4-on-4 for a little bit. And sixes is the best number. Can we agree on that?
Oh yeah, 6v6
Okay.
is the best.
So sixes is the best number. Then they decided, okay, like we're gonna try different rule sets, right? We're gonna try like 2 medics and like 2 engineers, and all that stuff eventually got banned out because we created our own perfect game, right? Which is competitive TF2, as it is 2 class limit. Certain classes are limited to 1. I feel like we've gotten pretty far along where like we as a competitive community have figured out the most fun TF2 game possible. I'm gonna go around and ask you guys like point blank, like Kurt, do you feel like sixes TF2 today, like the one that is played in ESEA, is that the most fun iteration of TF2 to date?
Sure. Yeah. Close
Okay.
to it at very least. I think I want to go back on Tag's point. I think it works in Overwatch because there's so many characters in the game, and a lot of the characters have very, very refined roles in the team composition. Whereas TF2 only has 9 characters and will probably forever have 9 characters. So if you have a class limit 1, I think the game will eventually be. I think it will be initially very interesting to see class limit 1, but eventually be very, very stale because it'll be literally the same thing we have now, but no quote unquote off classing. You'll just be seeing the same stuff over and over with no real change.
Right. Yeah, you're right. But like I said, also I thought about like Blizzard copied my idea for 1 hero limits because I thought about this way back when. But
Okay. So it sounds like, Austin, that you feel like the current TF2 is not the most fun TF2 today, and that there might be other options that we haven't explored yet.
I'm just, you just got to keep an open mind with these things, in my opinion. Like, I mean, what's the harm in just trying it? Like, from my understanding of the history of TF2, and Grant, you probably know way more than me. There was 7v7, there was 8v8. There was, a point where 2 medics were allowed and 2 demo men were allowed. But I've never heard of a point where there was one class limit. Do you know if there was?
Yeah, it's called Prolander. People have tried it.
Okay.
And I think there must have been some events that ran it, but it wasn't like way back in the day. It's been like around recently too. But never in a league or tournament that I've played in. So it's always been just some like obscure way to play. It kind of reminds me of Arena Respawn or something like that, where there was a 1 class limit.
And that didn't go very well.
I barely
So-
remember how Arena Respawn worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I'd be interested as well to try a different class limit, like a 2 across the board or a 1 across the board, because I feel like the way that we have it now with 1 on the classes that we deem not fun to play against multiple of, I feel like that's just never going to be just embraced by everybody. So I think just leveling it at 2 would probably be as far as I would go. I don't think 1 would work, or I don't think 1 would be as fun, but I think 2 could work, and it would, for the most part, it would probably feel the same as what we're playing right now.
Okay. Well, it sounds like we need a way to test out different game modes or rule sets to figure out which one's the most fun one. And matchmaking would not really be ideal for that because you can't really modify the rule sets there. So I know there used to be this thing called like new map pugs, where they would like run pugs and then like run different maps to see if they were good, and if the map was good enough, then they would nominate it for the next season of your league. Would you want like a new rule sets pugs, or would, like people actually go for that? Because you need some fairly high level players to be playing in those pugs to see if it actually fits.
Yeah, I mean, some sort of like TF2 testing grounds type group would be cool that tried out new maps and new rule sets or different things all the time. That could be interesting, but what you said is correct. You do need people that know what they're talking about, like participating in this, people with experience and skill, because otherwise it's just going to be a shit fest.
Yeah, but I feel like the same issue is still there, because even if this magical group did exist where you're testing out these new ideas, it wouldn't actually like work because people wouldn't actually play in it because there's no incentive to play in it, because right now all the incentive is to try and win the next season of ESEA Invite. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Right. It'd be like a hobby, you know. If playing ESEA was your job, then playing in a testing group would be just something you do in your free time. I don't know. It's not
Well,
that unrealistic to see people participating in that.
I don't
yeah,
know about how high level players will do that. Like it is their hobby, ESEA. Like scrimming every night and stuff like that is hobby.
Yeah,
Until like TF2 gets big, it's gonna remain that way.
I
But
was I was
I want
not
to touch
saying
on
that wasn't the case.
I want to touch on the 2 class limit that you mentioned. I think that's a good direction to go, but I think it really has to be in Valve's hands to make it not terrible with like
Mhm.
double medic strategies and whatnot. I think
Or
all they
double
could,
demo.
yeah, double medic, double demo. I don't know what they could do about double demo, but I think having medics not be able to overheal each other could be good enough to nerf 2 medic strategy. And I don't think it would impact the game like on like a pub level enough to make people complain or anything like that. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I think they'd complain for sure.
Oh yeah.
Really?
Oh yes. Yeah,
You still can do Uber chains though.
that's true. But I mean, I think that would be a solution to 2 medics, but um I don't think it's the right solution. I'm not sure though. I'd have to think about it more.
Yeah. And this is all like really weird right now because once again we're pretty much in limbo with how Valve is going to address and league rules and league rule sets. Do they want to allow weapon bans? Do they want to allow class limits? We don't really know yet. So
well,
Mhm.
I think the most interesting part about ESEA is that the players are the ones who decide the rules. Like
Yeah.
at the end of every season, all the invite captains get together, right? And then they decide, okay, we want to to ban these weapons and we're going to allow these other weapons. So they're already shaping the game the way they want to shape the game. I mean, I'm sure if enough people went to ESEA, went to try and said, hey guys, I would love to play 1 class limit 6s and I'm going to boycott your league until that happens, then they would change it, right? So that's where I feel like I'm fairly convinced that 6s with 2 class limit is the most fun TF2 possible. I mean, I
Right,
wasn't
but
like super for banning out one of the NGs and one of the heavies, but like I can see why they did it. But
and then you have the situation of, okay, ESC is getting pretty big. Valve, do you want to sponsor our event? Valve says no, we don't like your rule set because it's not regular TF2. Like, what do you do then?
well, that's
Like
what I'm
we're
saying is like
yeah.
we've spent like we do that every season, like 3 seasons a year, right? So over the course of like what 7 or 8, 9 years, like we think we would have refined the game to the point where we think this is fun. You know what I'm saying? And like the question then becomes like, why hasn't Valve embraced that rule set then, right? Like we've done all the legwork to try and do the research to figure out what's fun.
Off the top of my head, I think the issue is that they like people always say this when they watch 6v6 games. Why don't we see pyro? Why don't we see engineer? Why don't we see heavy more often? I think the issue there is that Valve really isn't on board with people thinking that some of the classes just aren't worth time to play for like a newer player or just a person that's not enjoys playing in pubs and enjoys playing pyro, enjoys playing heavy, and wants to get in competitive games, and then finds out that that class that you love so much, we don't use him. We only use him for defense on last in these very very specific points.
I mean, isn't that the case in like
think-
so many
I-
other games that have multiple classes? Like I just think of like every MOBA or like even CS
You're
or
right,
something,
you're right in that
right? Like,
case, but
I'm
it's-
so sad that Negev is a terrible gun in competitive
Yeah.
play. You know?
It's like increased because Dota and MOBAs have tons of characters, whereas TF2 only has 9, which isn't a lot these days anymore. I just feel like Valve doesn't want to alienate some of their players when players look at competitive, and I mean it may turn out that they do agree with us, but if they do have hesitation, I do think that is the issue that they're worried about.
Well, I think stuff like Pyro and NG can be played a little more aggressively, at least at mids, if you unban the Gunslinger and the Power Jack. But as far as the Power Jack, I think maybe unbanning it would be okay. To see how it
Yeah.
works. I don't think Pyro is a very strong class overall. Whereas I don't know about the Gunslinger. I think the knockback is kind of ridiculous. It screws up your aim if you're just getting hit by it across the map. But what are you guys' thoughts on that? Like, I think
Yeah.
unbanning those 2 specific items opens up the doors for more off-classing, at least for Pyro and Engineer.
Yeah,
I'm
I have a comment
100%
about that
for it.
actually, because the next season of ESEA got announced, right? And so now this is our opportunity to revamp the whitelist. Like, would it be so crazy? And Grant, I'll point it to you, to throw it to you first. Like, would it be so crazy if we just said, screw it, let's allow everything? Like, would that? I know a lot of people would be against it, right? A lot of people would say that this is terrible. There's going to be so many weapons in the game that we just hate. But wouldn't that move the game along a lot quicker than if we just like slowly unbanned one weapon at a time while the patches came through? And the patches don't come through very often. Like, we waited a long time for Meet Your Match to come out. So like, who knows when the next weapon balance is going to be? Wouldn't it be just faster to say, look, we're just going to unban everything for the next 3 months? It's going to kind of suck. We got some growing pains here, but at least the developers will finally get to see what all these weapons are like at the highest level of play. And we can finally start to address the most broken weapons. Like that season when the quick fix got changed and everyone's running quick fix and that kind of sucked. Like, isn't it still like
terrible.
okay? Well, yeah, but at least the developers got to see that it sucked and then they nerfed it later on, right?
It took a
it's
while
been
for the
nerfed
nerf
a
it.
little bit.
No.
Yeah, I actually I haven't had a chance to play with the quick fix since it was nerfed again, because it's been banned ever since. So I, again, would rather, like, I don't think. Okay, I agree that unbanning everything would produce tons of like feedback, and that would be definitely the fastest way. I do agree with that, but I don't think that would be. I don't know if that would be the
It would
best
be
approach,
safe.
because it might not be a safe approach, because I think we all agree that when the quick fix was allowed, that's like the perfect example. There could be some item that has been overlooked, or maybe it's still the quick fix that just overshadows everything, and it just completely changes the entire game. And I don't think that that's a risk that's worth taking, but I think that there's a lot of items that are very reasonable to unban. I think the 2 mentioned, like the gunslinger, the power jack, things like that, I don't really think that would affect the way the game plays, like overall, and it would actually lead to some people trying them out, like trying to run a pyro, trying to run an engineer, and I've never had a problem with killing an engineer that only has a shotgun, so that's fine with me. I don't know.
Hit scan.
Yeah, I mean, I see some people in chat saying like, if all the weapons were unbanned, people would just quit the game.
Yeah, because like
But-
in that situation where you change the rule set for the only league where money is involved and money is at stake, I think that's a little bit scary. Like it's like it might if it doesn't work, that's the downfall of ESEA. If it does work, cool, Valve sees it, but it like
well, it wouldn't work. Like, people would get upset about it. That's the whole point, though,
Yeah.
is that you would get upset at that and then push the developers to say, look, like, I don't know, the bonk is so broken.
do we
let's-
want to
let's
do
fix
that
it.
with our best, our best ride? Like, do we want to risk crashing it just for?
I think there's a happy medium, like unbanning the power jack and the gunslinger and a bunch of items that you think improve the gameplay and as far as dynamics go. I don't think you should ever ban or unban things like the Sandman. Like that's an item I feel like just shouldn't exist in the game. But as far as the gunslinger and the power jack, I think those are perfectly acceptable items. I do think the gunslinger is a little bit on the obnoxious side, but I don't think it has the potential of ruining the game completely, like the quick fix.
Especially with just such a small player pool, 6v6, and there's like no room to be able to spam it between like players. I think it would be manageable.
Yeah. So do you guys think we should reach out to the ESEA admins and get like a discussion going with them, like on board to make changes? Because there actually hasn't been like a weapon ban vote as far as I know. Like, they used to do invite captains.
Yeah.
Oh, they don't do
getting
that anymore.
They don't do that anymore. There used to be like a whole survey that Killing used to run, and now it's just like on a case by case basis. Maybe Try will send you a Steam message and be like, "Do you think this weapon should be legal or not?"
Try posted something on the forums a while ago and said he was considering doing a 1 gunboats limit.
Oh yeah, he did pull the invite captains about that.
Okay.
Man, I just see that's where I don't like it, where it just becomes so confusing. that like if you unless you've been following the game really closely, you're just not going to keep track of what's allowed and what's not.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm a huge like I love the idea of like nothing's banned, like keep the class limits as simple as possible, and then you don't have to explain to people who are new to the game
Right.
like, oh yeah, this is allowed, but that's not, and here's why, and it's just confusing,
Yeah.
you know.
In
Well,
an
can't you
ideal
make
world,
like a
we'd have
doc
that.
on stuff that's banned and just explain why it's banned and how it disrupts the flow of the game?
But
Yeah.
you can't always expect people to read the doc because I mean, as Twitch viewers, we all get those the very very common sense questions. There's just people. You're always going to have to explain it to someone. If there's a level of complication, someone will get confused. 100% of the time.
Yeah. Slyn, I wanted to hear though what you thought. Like, do you think that having things like the Quick Fix and Bonk and Criticola and Sandman, like being legal, do you think that and suffering through that for however many months it would take, do you think that would be worth it?
No, I think it's terrible. I was just playing devil's
Okay.
advocate. Yeah. No, I don't think we should crash down ESEA either. I mean, like not only are you scaring away all the people who like so imagine if you're brand new to Six's competitive, right? And like the developers are asking you, please play this game with all these terribly broken weapons and no class limits. And they're like, no, screw that. And now you're asking all your best players to do the same exact thing. Like that's terrible, right? So, I mean, there's obviously tons of broken weapons. I agree with Kurt that there's some weapons that shouldn't even be in the game. And if you were wanted to like keep the Sandman just to keep people happy, then you should just completely rework the item. But there's so many items that need reworking. It's just going to take too many man hours for them to do it quickly. So that's just going to take time.
Here's a solution: make the Sandman a reskin of the bat. Bam, fix. You could do
That
that,
could
for
be a
so many
Yeah,
weapons.
that's right. Yeah.
Like, would anybody really be that upset if they just remove the Sandman
Well,
from the game?
At that point,
Like, you can hit
you're
the
talking
ball
about.
still, it just
Someone
doesn't do
would be
anything.
on Reddit, you know.
But that's like a
but
full
he'll quit
game
TF2
redesign.
and he'll
Yes,
be
no one would
replaced by
care.
20 people
Yes.
who
Yeah.
like the game more.
Yes, you'd say good riddance, but someone would care.
I mean, I think it's terrible as far as competitive games go. We all know this to be true, that like a pro X, like a pro TF2, like a pro Call of Duty is just terrible because you just have too many different versions of the game, right? And that's why I don't like having 6s and 4v4 and 9v9 Highlander. Like, let's just pick one game mode that everyone likes and play it. And that's why I also don't like in TF2 how there's different game types, although I know it's working for other games. Like if you look at Overwatch, it's working fine, but like I still think that like all the maps should be 5 CP. Like I don't think we should
I
have
don't
different...
agree.
No.
Okay.
Oh.
All right.
I-
That's what I push
one
for.
of one of my dreams. I was thinking about this, bringing it up, but like one of my dreams for TF2 is seeing less. Like I want more. I want CTF maps back. I want like payload maps. I want attack defense maps. Even that one game mode that I don't know the name of because it only has one map for it. Territory
TR?
control. The SD. SD.
Doomsday?
Yeah.
The Doomsday.
Oh god, dude, I would never play Doomsday in
listen,
6.
What are you talking
listen,
about,
Listen,
Tag?
listen,
What the
listen.
fuck?
Listen, the only reason that game mode is like everyone despises that game mode is because that game mode only has that map, which is terrible. I think all
Oh,
of
you
these
mean
game
that
modes
game mode
ride-
designed in a better map would be
Yes,
fine?
I think all these game modes ride on the map maker and making sure that the map is good.
Yeah,
Or
but
else
like
if the
Why?
map
I
is
like
not
the-
good, it just
no,
ruins the
no.
game
Making
mode.
maps,
No.
that takes us years and years.
I
and
like
years.
the idea of like a League of Legends or Dota or Counter-Strike where like the same game mode is being played every single time. It's like StarCraft. You're not going to be playing like some weird thing next time. It's still 1 versus 1 and there's a map there for you. You know, that's that's what I like in an esports.
I think for a game like TF2, which is so team orientated, like having that diversity of objectives on maps would be pretty fun to watch and pretty fun to play. Like I really despise the fact that Gravel Pit was taken out of the rotation for competitive TF2. I think that there need to be. It's just 5 CP and King of the Hill maps. It's just for me, it's pretty boring. I'd love to see more or different game modes, but it just depends on the map.
I agree with you 100%, Tag. I think some game modes are fundamentally just going to be impossible to make competitive, but I think you could actually make payload competitive if you make the maps significantly
Yes.
smaller. Like,
But what's the point? Why would you even waste your time making payload do that when you could just make like a attack, defend, capture point map that does that?
Well, I mean, there aren't even like attack defend maps, so I would be okay with attack defend, but I'm sick and tired of seeing more 5 CP maps and more King of the Hill maps. We already have enough. We
Yeah, I
already have
think
enough.
I guess you could lean towards attack defend over payload because I think they kind of both play the same way. Just payload, you have to dedicate people to pushing a cart rather than capping a point for a brief period of time.
Because and then like the way that payload works is that you have like sequential opportunities to set up defenses and offenses and like in different parts of the map, and that might add different opportunities to go different classes or do different strategies or anything like that. It's just all of these things just like
Let me
open
ask
up
you, do you
different
play
ways.
Highlander?
Hmm?
Do you play Highlander?
I do not play Highlander.
They play a lot of payload over there. You might enjoy
I
your
do
time.
understand. No, the issue with Highlander, the thing I don't like about Highlander is their idea of one like if every class is on the map, the game's balanced. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work.
Yeah, it's dumb.
It doesn't work. Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm
No, I agree
sorry
with
if
you.
I'm being
No, it's
mean
dumb.
to Highlander plays. For me personally, I don't think that.
Nah, screw them. They're playing a dumb game. Like,
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
I-
You know what's
yeah.
really funny though is that it does sound like even amongst our four of us, like we have some top players here in the room, right? Like, I think there's still some discussion as far as like what's the best rule set for the game, right? And there's still going to be these growing pains as TF2 shifts from a casual game to a competitive game. So maybe, to go back to your point, Grant, I think that would probably be the best thing to do is like slowly pulling out one atom at a time as they become balanced, like slowly transitioning over to something like meeting somewhere in the middle. Like we already started at like
Yeah.
completely different sides. Now we're slowly coming together. And then maybe if we're lucky, a year from now, we'll see the same game, or 2 years from now or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully a little faster than 2 years. 2 years is a long time in internet time, so maybe we'll
It
wait
is.
that long. Okay.
Well, I think in a way we are seeing the same game because it seems like the pubbers that are playing competitive and the competitive players that are playing competitive matchmaking all hate the way it's structured currently. So we're kind of seeing like the flaws in it as a community. I think we'll all enjoy it just as much as the community as well when things are fixed. I don't know. I don't think that's a big deal. I think the biggest deal is making sure, well, we can't do anything about it, that Valve makes matchmaking not shitty. I think it's the reason that I and a lot of other people are so upset is that we've played games like Dota, we've played games like Counter-Strike extensively, and then we go to our other favorite game, TF2, made by the same company, and the matchmaking system is unbelievably crappy compared to the other two games. It's just like they didn't reference their games at all as far as the basic infrastructure of how
You mean like
matchmaking
lessons
works.
learned and
Yeah.
and what works
Well,
best.
I do think that I don't think it's very fair to compare them so simply. Like TF2 is a very, very old game. Like stitching in a matchmaking system into this very, very old code is actually extremely impressive. And I do know that people at Valve have been working on this game from like sunrise to sundown in the offices, like daily. It's definitely not an easy job. I do agree that some like things do seem pretty obvious that you shouldn't do, but I think in my mind there's something to do with how points, how score, and how you just play TF2 is different from those other games. It makes it harder to say, okay, you are this skill level in this game. If you see what I'm saying, like I
don't
think
really agree. I think that win-loss could still
Yeah.
be used. It's just it's not being used properly.
you're right. Actually,
I think in matchmaking, that's all that matters. I know people complain. It's like, oh, I got 3 gold medals and we still lost. I don't deserve to lose rank. And maybe in that specific game, you didn't deserve rank. And that's just how it works. It is unfortunate. But most of the time you lose, you deserve to lose. And most of the time you win, you deserve to win in TF2. And yeah, sure, there's going to be unfortunate scenarios where that happens. But at the end of the day, it's all about winning and losing. I don't think stats really need to come into play as far as your
Yeah.
rank goes.
Well, and
Yeah.
that's
It's way
where
more complicated too.
and that's where we're talking about like, oh well, catering to certain people's favorite classes, like catering to pyro. Like, I don't think that really matters. I think competitive players will try to do whatever it takes to win. If you want pyro to be good, you can always mess with the classes. Like they had that problem in World of Warcraft too. Where like certain team compositions were the better than others, so they had to balance all the classes so they were the same. And I think that's one way you can do it, but like if pyro sucks, it sucks. Like, suck it up and play a different class. Like if you actually want to win, you should be playing the best classes, and it's on the developers then to balance the game to make the other classes viable.
Yeah. I mean, all these conversations, I kind of want them to like spread out into the community. I kind of want there to be like a thread about every single one of these topics. Maybe there already are, but like I just feel like there's more we could be doing to push these things forward.
Yeah. Well, the
So
biggest
it's
thing
kind
right
of
now is
inspiring.
chances of ESEA existing next season ?
Well, that
Created by
happens every
my
season,
teammate.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we might as well address it while we're here with the last few minutes that we have on this podcast. So, does anyone think that ESEA will exist next season?
I plan on playing ESEA next season, so I mean, I'll be there, and I think other people will too.
Yeah, I
People
think it
like
will.
competing in TF2. I don't know why they would stop now. I don't know.
Well, I think the
should
reason
have
is
been
people might stop is because they were expecting matchmaking to make the game blow up, and they were kind of holding on, hoping that it would blow up after matchmaking dropped, and it kind of just stayed the same.
It's a good
But
point.
I think, like you said, your first point was people like playing competitive TF2 because it's really fun, and I think that's the bottom line. I think people will sustain ESEA and keep it alive, and if they don't, I think people will migrate towards Faceit. I think that's the next opportunity, right in front of us.
Yeah, true.
Or Overwatch?
Like, isn't Faceit cheaper anyway? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think he said it was cheaper.
Yeah, Faceit's free
Sounds
for
cheaper.
bugs.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, we should wrap up the show. We always cap it off at an hour. So thank you guys so much for joining us. If you missed the other part of the show, I'll upload the VOD to YouTube. Don't forget to follow these guys on their Twitters, Curtis Rust, That Guy Tag, and 4G Banny. And we'll see you guys next Friday. Thanks for watching. Okay, so thank you